Thank you very much, Admiral. We're going to have a 5-minute round, and also Senator Reid and I are going to recommend a second round of questioning because there's a lot of stuff to cover here. And I'm going to take my first 5 minutes with Director Deasy and General Raymond and Admiral Allen, and then set my other question for Dr. Griffin for the second round. Now, Director Deasy, the reason I bring this up is this is the one thing that's mentioned more than anything else when they're trying to defend what happened in the action of the FCC. So I would ask you, even though it's been touched on, can you describe the interagency process that caused the Department of Defense to conclude that Ligado's proposal was likely to interfere with GPS, and did the FCC consult you, and did they take your concerns seriously?
So, sir, the way I'd start that is when a company, in this case Ligado, wants to repurpose the spectrum, they submit that request to the FCC. The FCC, in turn, turns it over to the NTIA. Sometimes those go through what's called the Independent Radio Advisory Committee, the IRAC, which has 19 members. In the case of evaluating Ligado's request for repurposing their spectrum, it was turned over to the PNT XCOM, which is made up of 9 federal agencies. I co-chair that along with the Department of Transportation. The XCOM, what they did was they, in turn, asked the Air Force to conduct a series of independent studies and testing to determine whether or not the request that Ligado had put forth was reasonable and could be accepted. The testing took place and was completed in about April of 2016. As I had mentioned in my opening remarks, what that testing did was take a number of commercial and military receivers, approximately 80, and they test them over a long, extensive period of time, and they tested them to determine the levels of noise in which they would see interference. They used the requirements of what Ligado was specifying as acceptable, and in running those tests, they clearly indicated that the results of the test caused interference in all cases. So what was done with that information? And in turn, that then is turned back over in a form of a letter that I co-signed with Department of Transportation in December of 2018. That letter clearly cited the testing that was done by the Air Force. And in that letter, we say that it was unambiguous and unanimously agreed across 9 federal agencies that this could not move forward. Given that there was still concern raised and the fact that our letter was not being acknowledged, we felt compelled to follow up with 4 additional communications. One was back in June of 2019 from then Deputy Secretary Shanahan to the FCC stating the opposition. Secretary Esper in November of 2019 forwarded a letter also stating our concerns and opposition. The IRAC sent to the NTIA on February 20th a letter from 12 agencies that were signed expressing concerns. Dr. Griffin and myself furthermore sent an additional letter to NTIA in March of 2020. And finally, Secretary Norquist sent a letter in March of 2020, of which the final letter went from NTIA to the FCC on April 2020. Each of those letters made clear and cited the testing that was done by the Air Force that this could not be accepted, nor should it be recommended to move forward, sir.
Were you, then the second part of that question was, were you consulted by the, or asked by the FCC for your opinions, and did they take them seriously?
Sir, I will tell you that historically we've had a very good working relationship with the FCC when it comes to collaboratively studying requests like this. In the case of this particular request, no, sir, There was not a give and take of back and forth that we typically go through. And at the end of the day, we were completely caught off guard when over that weekend in April, the decision was taken by the FCC to go ahead and move forward.
Thank you, Director. And then lastly, General Raymond, you did touch upon this in your opening statement. Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of the impacts on the warfighter?
Thanks. Thank you very much, sir. The way I couch GPS, it's the DNA of our way of war. It's systemic in everything that we do. And it is clear, without question, that putting a ground emitter in with the space signals will cause interruption. I think that will increase risk to force and risk to mission. And I outlined in my opening statement that mission areas of Homeland Defense, our most critical mission, defense support civil authorities, and building the force, the training, and the readiness that we need. And I think it's a risk that we shouldn't accept.
Thank you, General. Senator Reed, I was going to ask you, has already been adequately answered, but I do have two questions that have come from the Ligado spokespeople that I just would like to throw out maybe to you, Director Deasy. The first would be, they state that the NTIA submission relies on irrelevant and misleading data to support their claims. Could you respond to that?
So for them to make that claim would suggest that the process that has been used for a very long time on evaluating all repurposing requests is at fault. And simply put, it is not. It is the process that has worked. It's the process we have used for years of repurposing. So I'm not sure why all of a sudden now the process that has served the agencies well, the FCC well, and NTI well was suddenly now being questioned.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the other question that's come from the other side with some frequency is they state that the FCC order does not impact DOD or federal spectrum. Would you agree with that? This is what they have stated.
No, clearly disagree. I mean, by the fact that we're sitting here today and you have General Raymond here representing the military,
I understand that.
Would clearly suggest that it definitely impacts the military operations.
That's good. We